Faitalia. The time is now 10:05 a.m. and I'm officially calling this meeting to order. This meeting is held virtually via Zoom. You may visit our website for the agenda and Zoom link. We will hold public comment near 12 p.m. today. For those wishing to submit public comment and are online, please message staff via the Zoom chat with your name. You will have 2 minutes with a reminder to wrap up your comments upon 30 seconds left. To submit written comments, you may email us at CAPAA@capaa.wa.gov. And I think that email will be in the chat. CAPAA was established to bring voice and visibility to the diverse Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities that call Washington State home. We advise the governor, state legislature, and all other state agencies on issues of importance to our communities, particularly as it relates to state laws, policies, and programs that impact them. We host 5 public board meetings each year to conduct official business. Thank you. And we will now move to roll call. Do I do or does staff do? Does roll call, ED Nam?
You do.
Okay, thank you. We have Commissioner Carrie Hui.
Good morning, everyone. Commissioner Carrie Hui from physically in Yakima County this morning. So glad to be here, also representing parts of King County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carrie. We have Vice Chair Kosai.
Good morning. I'm Commissioner Kendall Kosai, hailing from Pierce County.
Commissioner Scott Lemon.
Yes, Scott Lehrman, representing Franklin County, Japanese American. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fongsai.
Good morning. I'm Commissioner David Pongsa, representing Benton County.
Commissioner Sisavadi.
Bye. Good morning. Ekrat Sisavadi, please call me Ek, representing King County. I'm Lao American. Welcome.
And we have anyone else that I have missed?
I think that's everyone present. My name is Nam Wen. I am the interim director of the commission.
Thank you. My name is Lalita Upala. I use she, her pronouns, and I represent King County on the commission. Absent from the meeting today is Chair Faitalia. Next, we move to approval of the agenda. I'll now entertain a motion and second to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I motion.
Commissioner Eck has made the motion. A second?
I will second.
Commissioner Carey has seconded it. All in favor? Please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Commissioner Apollo, we have 2 new commissioners that just joined. We have Commissioner Kiana McKenna and Anna Leasing just joined.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner McKenna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. So sorry I'm late. This is actually the first time my laptop's been on in 3 weeks, so it was sleepy. But my name is Kiana McKenna. My pronouns are she, her, and I am in Spokane County. Good to see you all and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Commissioner McKenna. Commissioner Leasing?
Good morning, everyone. Apologies for being late. My name is Anna Leasing. I use she, she pronouns, and I am in King County.
Thank you, Commissioner Leasing. So we just approved minutes and next on our agenda is approval of the November 2024 draft board meeting minutes, which everyone received in advance. Are there any suggested changes to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there a motion?
Vice Chair, I move to approve the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kosai. A second? Do we have a second?
That was actually that was Commissioner Lehrman, but
Oh, okay.
I will
Thank
second it.
you, Commissioner. And the motion has been seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Any abstentions? So the November 2024 meeting minutes have been approved. We will now turn to CAPA's Executive Director, Nam Gayan, to present the January 2025 staff report. ED Nam?
Good morning. I'm here to present the staff report, and everybody should receive a copy in their email. If not, you can always request one from the commission. I'll start out with a brief summary of the first item that I want to report is the appointment process. As you know, my position is actually still open since July. We have recommended 3 names for the governor but the governor office has requested that we reopen the appointment process to welcome new application. And staff has publicized the application for the position, as well as reached out to our community partners to seek advice on application and to ask them to recommend people to apply. The deadline to apply is January 31st, 2025. That would be in 3 weeks. So if you know anyone interested in applying for the open position on the commission, please ask them to apply by then. The second item is the finance of the commission. CAPAA is currently in good financial condition, spending slightly below the budget for fiscal year 2025. That's partly because we haven't had all our meetings up to this point, and our current meeting is online, so we're able to underspend. There were 4 sponsorship requests for the month. We agreed to sponsor one of those requests based on advice of our commissioners, and that's the Samoan Fascio on September 9th, 2025 in Tacoma. I think this is the most important item on the agenda because since the November meeting, the governor released his budget for fiscal year 26 and 27. The budget includes a 15% decrease to CAPAA operational budget. Now, this was actually volunteered by staff. We looked at our budget and as the governor had asked every agency in the state to look at their budget to see whether they can make cuts because the impending shortfall. We decided that we can cut about 15% off our operational budget, and we volunteered that. And the governor included it in his budget. But the good news, in addition to the cut, the governor also funded 2 of our decision package. The first is $100,000 to develop Lunar New Year programming for fiscal year 2025. That's actually for this fiscal year. This is part of the supplemental budget for this year. We had a conversation with DES, our procurement advisor, and we are starting a procurement on that right now. And with the help of the education committee, we'll vet the procurement and also hopefully award the contract before July. The second decision package that was in the governor's budget is $75,000 for a need assessment and strategic planning for fiscal 26 and 27. Since this is for fiscal year 26 and 27, we don't have to move the procurement process right now. In fact, it's probably wise not to do it right now as the final budget will come out in May, and we'll see whether that will be a part of the budget. Hopefully it will be. And I'm hoping that one of the committee, maybe Health and Human Service, will help staff with this particular procurement in writing the procurement request and then vetting the contractor who applied. One note is that the governor's budget is not the final budget. The governor works with the legislature on the budget, with the final version expected in May 2025. Although because there is a shortfall there's an expected shortfall, May 2025 might be a little early. There might be special session and things like that to work out the final budget. This was on the previous staff report, but Governor elect Ferguson has begun transitioning into the governor's position. He has named his executive leadership and the majority of the cabinet positions. He has not decided on some of the smaller cabinet, including the various commissions. I will leave the next part to Nagin, to the legislative portion of the staff report, to Nagin to report. Otherwise, the rest of the reports is the meeting calendar. Our next meeting is in Pierce County on March 15, 2025, and the location is to be APCC. This will be an in-person meeting, our first in-person meeting in a year. This particular meeting, we want as many commissioners to come as possible in person, and we are actually trying to get more members of the public involved. Finally, there's two upcoming events that we know of. That's Lunar New Year on January 29, 2025. That's the holiday celebrated by a majority of the East Asian community. The second is APCC is celebrating Lunar New Year this year on February 15, 2025 at the Tacoma Dome Exhibition Hall. The culture APCC is highlighting this year is the Indian culture. So I'll leave the next part to Nagin, the legislative report for her. Nagin, can you take over?
Yep, no problem. So I'm just pulling my notes. So 2025 this year starts the first of a biennium. The odd number year starts the biennium and lasts 105 days. So like Nam mentioned, it goes from January through about the end of April. And if the legislature and governor cannot pass a budget by that point, they'll order or extend session in like 30-day increments called special sessions. The first day of session is this coming Monday, January 13. The legal duty for the state legislature is to pass a budget for the governor to fund its services for Washington state residents. The Office of Financial Management, OFM, they're the numbers people. They track government spending, calculate revenue projections, and inform both the governor and legislature of funding obligations to the state based on our RCW, Revised Code of Washington. Those are our laws. So during legislative session, the elected representatives from around the state submit their ideas on how to provide those services to constituents or to adjust previous budget proposals. In November 2024, a few months ago, OFM estimated that given the cost of maintaining existing programs and projected revenue, we are headed to a $10 billion deficit, like Edie Nguyen mentioned, by June 2029. So since that point, our former Governor Inslee mentioned, or he created a directive that there would be a hiring freeze across agencies and essentially put all agencies and commissions on notice to limit operating budget requests and new funding requests for programs. With the new administration, with Governor-elect Bob Ferguson, he has a proposal to downsize state budget with a 6% cut, which would be about $4 billion. All of this is just to highlight a potentially tight legislative session, very complicated, and we're going to be incredibly busy. And those are the limitations for any new ideas and new funding. CAPAA, and to highlight that because CAPAA is an agency under the governor's office, in terms of process, Edie Nguyen will be working really hard to protect and defend our existing budget and throughout legislative session. That will be his role. The board's role as CAPAA, just as a reminder, you all know this, are empowered to advocate on your legislative priorities, and staff and the legislative committee will be the ones working on strategy, coordination, testimonies on behalf of the board. And our newest commissioner, Anna Leasing, is the chair of the legislative committee, and she's actively not only brings a wealth of knowledge of how government works, how laws are created, to the board, but she's actively working with staff to create a roadmap for how we can create a 2025 legislative agenda. And then finally, you received an email from NAM about a bill that we do know that is of importance to the board regarding the Make Us Visible bill. NAM, do you want to talk about that now, or do you want me to hold?
Yes, we can talk about it now. Staff is proposing that because this bill was something that was discussed at the previous meeting, and also something that the education committee as well, has been working on for the last few years. Staff asked the commission to discuss whether to sign on to support the bill at this point. So I would ask for a motion to support the bill for CAPAA to sign on, or any discussion or comment on the matter. Commissioner, any motion or discussion?
Hi, this is Commissioner Siswati. So I would motion, but before I do, I just want to kind of just share a little bit. I mean, we all agree that education is a powerful tool, really against the fight of Asian, anti-Asian hate. And it's the most recommended, solution actually is to have a mandate that includes Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander history and in the curriculum. I believe it will transform communities, and so for really our A and NHPI students, learning their histories in classrooms promotes mental health, foster a sense of belonging, and affirm their place in the state they call home. For all Washingtonians, I believe having a bill out will cultivate that empathy, build stronger connections, and highlight the shared struggles and values that unite us as Americans. And so I hope that we all feel the same, and I would motion to have us approve and support the signing on of the bill.
Okay, is that a motion, Commissioner Siswati?
Yes, it is a motion.
Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Chair Lolita. Lolita, can you call for a vote, Chair?
Yes. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Any opposed, say nay. And are there any abstentions? The
Thank you.
motion passes.
Thank you, Chair. The commission now will sign on to the legislation as a support, and if needed, organize testimony around to support the bill, and work with the education committee to do so. So that is all for the staff report. Does any commissioner have any questions for us?
Any questions for staff from commissioners? If there are none, then we will now turn to welcoming our guests from the Ethnic Commission Roundtable. Executive Director Nam will lead this discussion. Before ED Nam begins, I would like to welcome our guests to introduce themselves and the full title of the commission you represent. Executive Director Prince, would you like to start?
Sure, I am happy to. I am Ed Prince. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington State Commission on African American Affairs.
Welcome, Edie Prince. And Edie Nam, would you like to take over from here?
I'll be happy to take over. But first, I would like Director Maria Seguenza to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. It's really good to be amongst you all today. My name is Maria Sigüenza. I direct the Commission on Hispanic Affairs.
Thank
Thanks.
you. So thank you, Maria, for joining us. So as as you know, we are the Ethnic Commission. We're basically in the same office. We have been working together for many years, and we have never actually had since I've been a commissioner, even had much had went to each other meeting and uh, had each other in the same room in the commission meeting. I when I became director, I wanted to take the opportunity for our commissioners to get to meet the other ethnic commissioner, especially since COVID, we don't even have a chance to go to the same party, the ethnic reception every year anymore. That has been a little I guess that windowed down a little over the year. So our commissioner have not had the chance to talk to you guys, and we're partners in many projects. And that leads me to my first discussion topic is that what is your commissioner working on? What projects are you working on? What project are you looking to do? Things that you're doing now and things you're doing in the near future. I'll start with Ed.
All right, thank you, Nam. I think we are all in some form working on our opportunity gap study that we're doing for the EOGOAC. So we're really tongue tied this morning. We are really working on that. And then most of our stuff has been getting our commissioners ready for this upcoming session. The Commission on African American Affairs is somewhat lucky that we've got the Legislative Black Caucus, which has 13 members now. And we've really been working hard to align with them on priorities for this upcoming session. So most of my time has been spent since Election Day working with members of the Legislative Black Caucus to talk about priorities for the upcoming leg session.
Maria, what is the Hispanic American Commission working on?
Well, we've been working on a lot this last year specifically. So as you may know, we were funded to have a community development team. It's a team of four staff that are embedded in specifically actually Eastern Washington. They have been working with community organizations locally to understand the different populations that exist across Washington. So I know one of the things that you all know really well is that no community is the same. And that is especially true in different pockets of Washington state. And because in our worlds, there's no way to disaggregate data outside of the ethnicity. We don't have a lot of information. So we've deployed our staff to really gather anecdotal data on what our community looks like across the state. So we've been doing surveying, we've been doing outreach, we've been doing asset mapping across the state. We also have a couple of projects right now moving through. So yes, Ed, we too are doing the EOGOAC project, and we actually contracted with WSU to do our project. I think we're all on the same timeline. We're well underway to getting that done by the end of this fiscal year. We recently were successful in getting a contract with the Department of Ecology. We partnered with Ecology to submit to the EPA for funding to do some environmental justice work. And so we have a full-time staffer funded out of that pot of funding, and we're doing some safer choice product work. So the big question is, how do we engage our Latino community in Washington state to A, learn about safer choice products, what they are and why they're important, and then B, the EPA wanted us to be able to convince our community to make the switch. We said, that's probably not going to happen. How about we tell you what we learn? And so we're gathering learnings so that we can then maybe create some policy around how to make adoption of safer products a little bit more feasible for our Latino community. We have also been working with folks in the Skagit Valley to do some gang prevention work up there, so anti-youth recruitment. And we actually had a small pool of funding from the legislature accidentally come to the commission instead of our community partners. And so we're working a little extra closely with them to make sure that they A, receive those fundings, and then B, that creates the opportunity for us to be pretty synergistic about policy priorities in that area. And then the final thing that I'll talk about is because of the current political environment, we are now deploying our rapid response network that we created during the COVID era, so that we can have our grass tops community leaders and strong communication should we need to after January 20th. We're also reviving a resource hub for community members to access, so that we close the loop on information.
Thank you, Maria. And and CAPAA is doing much similar work. We are focusing a lot on education. We both have the educational disparity study. We're developing curriculum on Lunar New Year. We're also looking into developing more economic development in the South Asian community. We're looking to partner up with the governor's small business team to do that. And we're also looking into other projects, including working with partners in the Department of Commerce and perhaps the Department of Correction. That's something that we're looking at for the near future. But I wanted to go follow up with the educational disparity study because we all had the same grant, and instead of Wazoo, sorry, Ed, we went with the University of Washington.
Okay to go with the lesser school.
I beg to differ, but I'm a UW grad myself. But it was not my decision. I'll say that. Can you share some preliminary result from that, and when is the expected final report?
So we contracted with a community-based organization that's done a lot of work with us, Imago Consulting, to do a lot of that work. And we worked with ERDC on some of the data and with OSPI on some of the data. And we took it in two parts. So we wanted to get all of the data that we could. But we also wanted to hear from voices in the community about where they think things are now versus where they were when the first study was done in 2008. So we did a survey with, I think, 300 results. We've done focus groups, and now we have together like a strategic team of people steeped in the education field that's helping inform some of the stuff. So we've got principals, education advocates, all sorts of people that are just school board members. I believe we have like 2 school board members on this committee that are working through the findings that we came up with. And honestly, what we found so far, and I believe we presented this to ELGOAC last month, is that not much has changed, unfortunately, from when the study was done back in 2008. Unfortunately, we're still kind of stuck in the mud on where things are when it comes to education for African American students in the state of Washington.
Maria?
Yeah, and I will say the same thing. We're not seeing marked improvements in a lot of the areas that we had in our original report. Um, we have taken a very different approach to the study in that WSU is really leading the full study. We do have a community component to it as well, so that we ensure that we're bringing in the parent voice or the family's voice into the study. Um, but in the preliminary results, we're still about a quarter of the student population in K through 12 schools, and we still are consistently coming pretty low in overall readiness when it comes to areas of learning.
I'm sorry, can I add one thing? And it just popped in my head when Maria was talking. But we're still high and over disciplining. Like the rates of over disciplining for African American students is still double the amount of what it should be.
That's good. Well, I'll report on what the UW University of Washington Research Testing has found. So far, they have issued a preliminary report. We expect the final report in May. One of the things I highlight is the one thing we did focus a lot on that's different from the previous report was that we focus a lot on data disaggregation. We look at Pacific community, in the Asian American community, as well as the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community. One of the things that I think the really noted for us was that there is an increase in mental health decline among certain population. And that's something that we may want to focus on for the next part to go beyond the study. We're thinking of what to do beyond the study, in addition to just reporting it to the legislature and recommending some policy and education. We're also thinking about looking into mental health and maybe perhaps a follow-up research on mental health in the after this particular study is completed. In fact, the University of Washington team has brought us some ideas about how to in terms of policy and in terms of a continuation. And actually, this is one thing that's probably safer a question for later on that we want to think about working together, the various commission, because we both have studies on education. Perhaps we can work together on future studies or on how to present the study to the legislature and to the EOGAC. So the next part is my question is that given our current times, what issue are you most concerned about within your community? What is your community thinking about? What are they worried about? What do they fear, and what are they hopeful about? I'll start with Maria this time.
No pressure on the easy questions. I think one of the things that I'll talk from the commission's perspective. One of the things that we're worried about, based off of the conversations that we've been having with our community, especially grass tops, is this next switch into the next federal administration. We're starting to see ice roundups in California. And our community organizations have been working overtime since the election to ensure that they are prepared to support the community how they may need. So a lot of our community organizations have been creating legal aid arms into their nonprofits. They have gotten their staff certified by the DOJ to help with that legal aspect that may be needed. We're again creating that rapid response network so that we're really in close communication on what's going on with our community. And while that's also a fear, it's really created an opportunity for people to be very open and vocal in their advocacy efforts, especially when it comes to dreamers or folks that have been here all of their life contributing to the positive society that we have here in Washington State, and really defending the fact that they too belong here. So that has been a really beautiful thing to watch because we know that we will come together, and we have come together, especially in recent memory with COVID. Well, I can argue that we still are going through a pandemic, but I'll say with COVID still behind us, we're building upon the partnerships that we have as it pertains to kind of our state system. Nam, I really do agree with you that in this EOGOAC work that we've been doing, and work groups that we've been part of with OSPI, we do know that there has been a trend since 2020 of mental health really impacting especially our youth, but really just in general our community. So we have been starting to dive into some of those advocacy efforts with our state agencies, helping people understand that while we are talking about behavioral health access, we also have to think about what access in general looks like to our behavioral health care system, because that, as we all know, always falls by the wayside when we're trying to create a new system that should be accessible to everyone. So that there's a nexus point with the gang recruitment prevention that we've been doing. A lot of that work has focused on providing a sense of safety and a sense of family and a sense of community to kids that are at risk of being swept up into gang culture. And really what we have found is that, our kids aren't bad and our kids don't want to be going into gangs. What happens often is that they're seeing their parents work multiple jobs, and they're being offered community and security through these means, and so they'll jump and they will do what they can to contribute to their families' effort to move ahead. And we know that doesn't really have positive outcomes. So a lot of the prevention work that we have been supporting has been creating positive environments where kids can really create community outside of that gang culture. And so a lot of our efforts are going to be talking about how our state system can really help in funding and creating those opportunities for safer spaces for our kiddos that are culturally relevant and that are welcoming for them and are familiar for them. So those are kind of the big overarching things that we've been thinking about and working on in the last couple of months.
Director Ed Prince.
Thanks so much. So I think when we think about the transition to our new government next week, I can't believe it's next week.
Yeah.
One of the things that, or 12 days or whatever, one of the things that we're hearing concern about is, well, I guess twofold. One is economics. Trump got a judge in Texas to overturn the overtime rules, and that's going to have a huge and retroactively take back any raises that were given to low-wage workers because of the overtime rules. So really concerned about people who are low-wage workers and what they're going to do as far as, being able to provide for their families. But then also there's concern about, are we going to go back, roll back into what law enforcement was pre-George Floyd? And are some of the gains that were made going to be lost because we no longer have an advocate in the White House for those changes? So that's really federally. Statewide, African Americans are always going to be concerned about the disparity in public sector contracting and just the woeful state that especially African American contractors have been in since I-200. We are working with the LBC, the Legislative Black Caucus, on making sure we get more funding for the CRP, the Community Reinvestment Project, working on issues around social equity in cannabis. Unfortunately, cannabis industry is here. We want to make sure that there's equity amongst communities of color. And then we have a group of people in the community who were pushing Governor Inslee and legislators to look at a study on reparations. So those are really the three big things. They are four big things statewide that we're looking at is public sector contracting, getting more funding for the CRP, social equity in cannabis, and working with the community who wants to have a statewide study done on reparations.
Well, thank you, Ed. And speaking of that, the CRP is presenting right after this panel. So if you stick around, you may be able to give them some feedback or, well, I'm sure you had discussion with that team multiple times. So as for the community that CAPAA serves, I'll just name the three obvious ones. It's similar to what Maria mentioned. We are concerned about immigration and what happened to and the possible deportation of our community members. We are, as seeing the last what happened in 2016 to 2020 and during COVID, we are very much concerned about anti-Asian hate and the rise of that. And one of the things I don't think that's mentioned enough is that we are always concerned about being ignored. We don't want any of our Asian American community to be ignored, or especially we don't want the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community to be ignored by government on the federal level or on the state level. With that, I think this is also the opportunity because we have our commissioner here. I'll ask our commissioner what in particular, can you give a short sentence of what you are concerned about in our community? Does any commissioner weigh in? I'm not going to call on people.
I can go. So first of all, thank you to both of you for joining us today, and thank you for the work that you do in all of our communities, and giving a voice to folks across the state. So thank you very much. I think one of the things that I'm concerned about or thinking about moving into this year and subsequent years is obviously with a new administration come in, how can we work together to push back against some of this rhetoric that oftentimes alienates or others our communities in particular. And so Executive Director Nguyen just mentioned the rise of anti-Asian hate. I'm sure other communities that we've seen are also going to experience a rise in hate over as they did previously before. I'm wondering if that is something that you're also concerned about or thinking about, and how you're preparing for that kind of, scourge that's going to be coming our way. And then the only other thing that I'll mention is I really appreciate this conversation today and learning more about what you're doing with your commissions. Because I think oftentimes our communities are oftentimes pitted against or used as a wedge or pitted against each other and all these things. So just a deep appreciation for the continuous for you being here on a Saturday and maybe additional opportunities for us to get together with all commissioners beyond the holiday party, obviously, but to have more conversations or just to get to know each other a little better. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and to answer that question that you had, one of the things that we have done really well at Hispanic Affairs is or be responsive to our community and be able to ensure that they are being connected with whatever they need in that moment. But one of the things that I have not been good at is something that CAPAA has been very good at, and that's talking about why creating anti-hate campaigns. And so I think that is a really phenomenal opportunity, especially with the political climate that is upon us, is to be in lockstep with anti-hate initiatives that could come out of our offices. I think it would be really beautiful to see all of us coming together and creating maybe not a cohesive campaign, but something that mirrors each other, and that is happening at the same time. So that could be a really good opportunity for us to work as teams in kind of a greater outreach effort.
One of the things that I've always said about my commission, I think it's true for all of the ethnic commissions, is we really are the front door to state government for our communities that don't necessarily know how to navigate agencies. I can't count how many times we've gotten a call because someone's having an issue with employment security or someone's having an issue with the L&I or another agency and needing our help to help navigate that structure to get the result that they need because, the state bureaucracy is huge. And if you are just an everyday citizen that pays their taxes, goes to work, takes care of your family, and go home, you don't necessarily know how to navigate it. So I think, but I agree with Maria. Finding a way to come up with a cohesive, collective campaign to support each other with the new administration is very important.
Uh, Commissioner McKenna, had your hand raised first.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to put in my one sentence, but thank you so much, you both, for being here. Like Commissioner Kosai said, on this Saturday, we really appreciate it. It's great to hear from both of you. I just wanted to put in that I think, so my name is Kiana McKenna. I work for the Pacific Islander Community Association of Washington in my full-time job as their policy and deputy director. But the predominant needs that I think our NHPI communities are facing in Washington right now are very similar to other communities of color and other traditionally overburdened communities. Some of the immediate needs, which are very much reflected in like policy and legislation, housing, food, healthcare, language access, which I think there can be a lot of relation to. And then more on the systems level, data disaggregation, police accountability, and also the anti-trans hate and legislation that I think we're seeing. Those are really, really big ones for us at a systems level. So all things we're thinking about as we head into this legislative session.
Thank you, Commissioner McKenna. Commissioner Lohman?
Oh yeah, thank you. Great conversation there. Former school board member myself here in Eastern Washington, Pasco, Washington. So my community is majority Hispanic actually, and just something I like to see advocating for is we have single digit Asian American, single digit African American, single digit Eastern European, and a lot of those groups, not just Asian American, not just African American, don't get advocated for in communities where minority groups have become the majority, right? And we say we have diversity and we're advocating for the diversity, but we're sometimes advocating for one group. And on the west side, it may be opposite. There may be higher Asian American and Hispanic American, African American don't get advocated for. So I like to see this partnership. It's awesome, and just all of us to remember, regardless of our ethnicity, really in our communities advocate for the minority. If we're a historic minority that becomes a majority, continue advocating for those other minorities that need that help. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Commissioner. So our next question to the panel, this is one of the, and I'll answer this question first. And this is a trend we see that the nation is undergoing, and that is the moving away from diversity, equity, and inclusion project. One example is Meta yesterday announced that they're getting rid of their DEI program completely. Um, how do you how should we face this trend, and where do you see the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion going? And I'll start with a brief answer, and I want you guys to weigh in because we are, as an organization, each of our organization is involved in the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think this trend is troubling, and I think it's a lot of corporation giving up into what they see as the political movement of the country. I think this is temporary though. I think people it's going to move back and forth, and I think a lot of our community will realize that diversity, equity, and inclusion does improve the lives of everybody in the country. And I think we have to uphold our values. In the short term, I think like one of the things I've been hearing in the community, in the DI community, is that we're glad we're living in Washington State, where we have some things like the Office of Equity, and we continue to fund projects like that. We're standing pat on what we believe. However, I think we need to work with other organizations, not just government. I think corporations are one of the things that I fear uh, in this trend of moving away from DEI because they do put a lot of money and effort into it in the past. And other organizations beyond that, like professional organization. I'm part of the Washington State Bar Association, and we are still continuing with our DEI project. We're just renaming it. We're instead of like DEI, we're calling it equity and justice. And another entity I know, instead of calling it DEI, they're calling it well-being. I'm not sure that this is a trend that I support. I'm open to renaming things, but I think for some opponent, I think it's kind of whack-a-mole when they see new things they don't like even well-being. Even if you say we're trying to work on the well-being of our staff, our people, and our citizens. People will say that is a very progressive or woke idea, and they'll try to whack that down. That becomes another word. So I'm more in the camp of like we stick to our value, we stick to what we've been saying over the year. But people have been trying to convince me of that stand recently, and I've been receptive. So I'll start with you, Ed. What do you think about this trend, and how do you think we should face it?
I think fortunately, those of us for DEI allowed the right to hijack the meaning of it, just like they hijacked the meaning of the word woke. And we didn't put up much of a fight about it because we thought, well, people who share our values support it. But I think what we're seeing now that Trump was reelected is that we're seeing a sense of overcorrection, and I hate that. And there are companies now that are getting rid of DEI that I'll no longer support because I think that they're overcorrecting in light of what's going to be the next 4 years of a presidency because they think that's what they need to do to not be targeted by the federal government. Which, if your values are your values, that's what should matter. And protecting your employees that are employees of color is what should be important, not protecting whatever you might need to protect from the federal government because you think they might come after you because you have a DEI program. And so I think in light of all this, the commissions are more important now than ever because we need to be that beacon for our communities so that they know that there's people out there who care about them, care about their issues, will work with like-minded folks to make sure that their issues are taken care of and they know that they have value.
Maria?
Yeah, plus one for both of your comments. And I think what I will drive home is that yes, we have seen over the span of the last few decades this work being called different things. And I think we're at another nexus point where we might have a rename for efforts that we have been working on. But the thing that I come back to is that the Civil Rights Act still exists. And one of the things that I talk about with the ever evolving world of DEI, DEIR, is that access is still number one, right? We still work on language access. We still work on physical access. Those are rights that people have. And I will always remind that regardless of a DEI initiative, we still have to make sure that our efforts, especially in state government, are inclusive and accessible. The other thing that I think about is that our agencies have been around for over 50 years, and we don't talk about it as such, but we do equity work. We've been doing equity work for 50 years. We've not called it that, but ensuring that our government works for the communities that we work with is equity work. And so regardless of the ebbs and flows of the DEI worlds, we've been here for 50 years. And the other thing that I think about is the fact that, yes, we have an equity office and they're in statute now. And so we really have created an environment where we have us 3 ethnic commissions, we have the Women's Commission, we have LGBTQ, we have the Office of Equity, and we can work in tandem. And we should be working in tandem to ensure that regardless of what happens, with DEI efforts across the nation or within our state, we are still doing the important work that we have been for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Maria. That's really all the time we have, but I'll leave a couple minutes for if anybody here has any question for us right now. This session has given me some ideas for collaboration in the near future, so I'll skip that question. Um, so anyone else, anyone have a question for Ed, Maria, or myself? Raise your hand.
I just have a comment, Edie Nam, and I just want to thank Edie Prince and Maria for being here. And you said something that I will carry with me today, that we have been doing this work for decades. It's just been given this name, and that power comes from collaboration. And so I totally echo Edie Nam saying that collaboration will get us that power that we need together. So thank you so much for being here. Any other comments or questions?
Okay. Well, seeing none, thank you, Maria, Ed, for being here. You're welcome to stay on. We have the Department of Commerce presenting on the CRP next. And this was very productive because we're rarely in the same room. I mean, we share the same suite, but we both move around a lot to state quite a bit. So this actually gives me some idea for ways we can cooperate in the near future, especially in the upcoming term, especially in terms of the EOGAC educational disparity study. I think there's definitely synergy and definitely work we can do together on that one. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Please move on to the next portion.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. We will now turn to the Department of Commerce to provide an update on their community reinvestment program. Thank you for being here, and please introduce yourselves. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Corbett Mosley here with Department of Commerce. Thank you for the time today. Again, my name is Corbett Mosley, the Managing Director of the Community Reinvestment Project, and our CRP for short. And I'm excited to share how the project is going and how we're working with communities and walk through this. So, oh, thank you for bringing it on the screen. I appreciate that. So let me go to, let me just make sure I grab my notes real quick. I'm trying to make it as concise. There's a lot to cover on here. If we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, shoot. So just, and we can go to the next slide. I just want to briefly share that the Department of Commerce strengthens communities by addressing critical needs like housing, small business support, public safety. There's a lot of investments that Commerce does across the state, and kind of underscoring the case for what we've been able to accomplish with the CRP. So let me start off with describing a little bit about the proviso language that talked a little bit about targeting communities that were disproportionately impacted by state and federal laws for drug possession. And to share, some of the ways that government really targeted communities. And so there's not a statement that's more pointed than John Ehrlichman, who actually is from Tacoma, who was assistant to the president of domestic affairs under Richard Nixon. And he said, you want to know what this war on drugs was really all about. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and Black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or Black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and Blacks with heroin and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities, we could arrest their leaders, raid their homes and break up their meetings and vilify them night after night on the evening. And did we know we were lying about the drugs? We did. So this is decades of domestic and historical policy too, related to how drugs and law targets particular communities. And if we can go to the next slide, while the war on drugs disproportionately targeted Black, Latin, and tribal communities across the state. Asian and Pacific Islander communities in Washington state have also faced significant yet often unrecognized impacts from systemic inequities, including the war on drugs. And just to kind of point out some data here from CIRAC, nationally between 1998 and 2020 and 2017, over 13,000 Cambodian, Laotian, and Vietnamese Americans received final deportation orders, many stemming from old criminal records. And we've seen some of that in some of the remedy that we've been able to do through the CRP over the past year. And when you get a second, if I can just point you to, on this point, Nam, to the report from the Seattle Clemency Project, which was one of the CRP funded organizations. That's in your meeting document today, that really goes into a lot more detail. We're really impressed about the work of the Seattle Urban League and in partnership with by and for organizations across the state, and the work that they've been doing related to fighting for and providing free legal assistance and support. And there's some data that I'll be able to point to in just a second. If we can go to the next slide. So, and we'll skip to the next slide. So what exactly is the CRP? It's a well, there's a couple of things. There's the CRA, the account that's in RCW, that set up the account and designed it to address racial, economic, and social disparities experienced by historically marginalized communities in Washington state. And separately, there was a proviso that put money into the account, and the proviso that put money into the account was in that budget year was targeted by the war on drugs. But the war on drugs is actually not mentioned in the RCW. And I want to be clear about that. The proviso that put that funding in for the first time talked about the war on drugs, but the RCW and the account structure doesn't have that targeted harm in there. So this is a $200 million investment, and that RCW also mandates collaboration with by and for organizations to ensure culturally relevant and effective program implementation. And we've learned a lot about that through this process. And if we can go to the next slide. So how can the money be used from the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Account? It can be used in 4 areas: economic development, legal assistance, community-based violence intervention and prevention, and reentry services. And recently, agriculture was added to that, but the plan didn't include an agriculture bucket yet. That came after that was added after the proviso. So these are the 4 areas that CRA dollars can be used for. And if we can go to the next slide. And the investment, the plan for the 200 million to really impact the state. This is just kind of a snapshot of those 4 areas of investment working together. And we've tracked and in the plan over the next 10 years, those investments are on target to produce $1.6 billion in economic benefit for target communities. And there's and we're on track in terms of our projections to get the dollars out in this 2-year period, and hitting that mark over the next 10 years with what the economists and folks are tracking, are projected out. If we can go to the next slide. So who receives the money from our support from the CRA? So the investment is designed to impact communities disproportionately harmed by the historical design enforcement of state and federal criminal laws. And early on, community made a distinction between not just thinking about individuals who were arrested, individuals who experienced harm, but the idea of community harm as opposed to individual harm. That the harm was so massive and impactful for whole communities that it was important to look at not just an individual who was incarcerated for drug possession, but who was but communities that a good majority of those individuals came from. So the grants must be distributed in collaboration with by and for organizations, and those by and for are organizations that are led by and primarily staffed by individuals from the community it serves. And that these organizations ensure that people most affected by system inequalities are the ones shaping and delivering solutions. And from a community standpoint, I think this is important to acknowledge because ensuring that the contracts are with by and for organizations also prevents paternalism. It's not just a organization that can serve more of a particular community, but trying to advance shifting power dynamics where those organizations that represent those communities and led by those communities are the ones that we're partnering with for co-creation and service delivery so that we can really close some equity gaps and disparities. We can go to the next slide. And this is kind of another way to just kind of check, is the money going where it's supposed to be going? Again, it's on those 4 categories for this investment, the purpose. We've gotten investments in each area, and then there's a couple of like sample performance indicators that we're tracking. How do we know we're moving the mark, or how do we know the investment is going where it needs to go for that category? There's a few KPIs that we can share. If we can go to the next slide. So again, we're collaborating with by and for organizations, and we're not just doing that in a way that is tracked by who we're communicating with, but for each of the contracts, we're tracking the percentage of the funds distributed to by and for organizations, and then monitoring the impact of those funds that they've had on their respective communities. So we are gathering demographic data for the service delivery grants to know how different communities are being served and tracking that. But we're also paying attention to by and for organizations that are participating and partnering with us. We can go to the next slide. And I'll try to speed up a little bit now. Okay. So how are we measuring success? We have public access to funding information, community involvement, and other accountability measures in partnership with the Office of Equity. Is it possible that we could click on that link to the results dashboard? Oh, it might open up a new, maybe we can come back to that in a minute, but essentially on the CRP web page, and I'll try to put a link in the chat in just a second, all of the agencies that we've contracted with are on that sheet. So you can see the funding amount, and then you can see the actual organizations who received funding and their dollar amount and the contact person for that organization for over 400 contracts. Thank you. And so on this page, you can see the full community designed plan that's in blue. But if you click on that CRP community dashboard, it's going to pull up a couple of highlighted outcomes that we're tracking, and the list of the organizations who have been contracted with. And as soon as that pulls up, great. so you're seeing, over 2,000 people are employed. 700 of those are actively in training. Folks are receiving incentives, career incentives as they work towards their career goals. Businesses are being engaged with the workforce system. Small business grants are going out. So this is a little bit of a preview of some information that is going to be available on a public dashboard that Office of Equity will launch here. I believe this month. It will be available on the website to see all of the indicators that we're tracking for all 17 different programs. And if you go below this front dashboard, you'll see contracted organizations, and then you can see each of the organizations, their obligation amount, and the contact name. I just thought that would be important to make sure that folks know where to access that information. And if we can go back to the PowerPoint. And the next slide, please. And the next slide, please. So again, we've been able to award over 197 million in contracts through the CRP to support communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. With over 400 grantees in a combination of grants, direct allocations, and other procurement processes. And these investments have prioritized buying for organizations, ensuring that the communities most affected play a leading role in shaping and delivering solutions. And we think that that's a really great way to operationalize equity and again, just going back to that notion about balancing power and actually co-creating with communities in terms of culturally responsive programs. If we can go to the next slide. There was the community reinvestment plan that had all of these programs listed in there. And then here's a list of each of the programs, their allocation amount, and then the percentage of buying for organizations, the percentage of funding that have gone to buying for organizations for each program. You'll also see in 3 areas, 3 of those programs are local workforce councils, and they don't have a percentage of buying for. That's a different service delivery strategy in partnership with ESD and a predetermined allocation method to have services basically statewide on those 3 programs. If we can go to the next slide. The other thing that we've been able to do is launch local advisory teams in 6 counties, and the 6 target counties, and that's Pierce, King, Snohomish, Yakima, Spokane, and Clark. They all have local advisory teams made up of members from that community, of buying for organizations and community leaders that are also guiding and directing additional resources at the local level to support their needs. And that partnership is strong with philanthropy in helping to also address another issue of reimbursable grants. And so the partnership with philanthropy allows us to push dollars out and then for philanthropy to be reimbursed in a contract with Commerce. And so we're excited to kind of learn from that process, have a statewide approach, and be able to identify some best practices that deal with that issue of small grassroots organizations just frankly oftentimes don't have the cash flow to do some state contracting. And I think we've come up with a way to learn about how we can do that better in partnership. If we can go to the next slide. These are the list of the 6 host organizations that have supported the infrastructure of those local advisory teams at the local level, and are in addition. There's been an allocation of 2.5 million to United Ways of Pacific Northwest. This covers United Ways in each of the 6 counties. They provide additional support to local advisory teams. They have some additional re-grants for small grassroots organizations that they're distributing. They are also launching a free statewide tax system that should be online by the end of this month. And that's really significant. In the state of Washington, nobody will have to pay to file their taxes. They could use this free tax system modeled after California's version of this, their United Way VITA tax system. And with an additional feature. And so when you file your taxes and you put in your household size, it'll also let you know what state programs you're eligible for. And so it's a kitchen sink app that they've developed. I've seen it. It's a pretty exciting thing to be able to make sure that people are accessing all of the federal tax benefits that they can, or state local tax benefits that they can, and that they know what resources are available to them and their families. If we can go to the next slide. I showed you where this was at, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of progress and action pieces in terms of, the engagement that we did with the workforce system really advanced Black, Latina, and tribal and other community, all community members that are non-white into the workforce system. They went from 23% in terms of enrollment for the workforce system for EXA to 56% statewide. And that's a significant caseload change of going from 23% of the target group enrolled into workforce programs to 56%. We're really excited about that growth and that engagement and the partnership that local workforce development councils are having with buy-in for organizations in their communities. In addition to the grants that they've been able to put out for small businesses to grow and be partnered with for on-the-job training, those kinds of things. Legal assistance has really been phenomenal. 898 people have had their criminal records vacated. I think more Blake decisions in addition to that. And we're also tracking as many as over 2,000 youth enrolled into sports programs that are also now receiving social, emotional, and violence prevention support. So we have 2,000 youth that are engaged in those programs. 368 coaches have been trained in social, emotional, positive behavioral intervention supports, and 942 volunteers statewide. So pretty significant things that we can start to point to, and we'll see more of that roll out over the next month. If we can go to the next slide. I wanted to highlight, I thought this would be a great report from Seattle Clemency Project on supporting legal assistance on immigration. And the person that you're looking at there, Mr. Lopez, was one of those veterans who was deported from with a drug charge, essentially, I believe, reunited and pardoned with reunited with his family and pardoned. This is significant, life-changing work for families. 235 immigrant families protected, and knowing that with the legal aid that they need, they're 10 times more likely to win their cases. And there is a host of folks that are really serving a lot of folks statewide. So we're really proud of the legal assistance work that the CRP has been able to provide, both for record vacature, deportation support, immigration support, and that kind of work. If we can go to the next slide, this is a snapshot from Seattle Clemency Project on just their kind of a quick look of who they've been serving in terms of legal assistance, and a couple of success snapshots to share. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, a couple of quick spotlights. This is I really would love to drop a video, but I think we're I'm kind of running slow on time, and I want to make sure that there's enough time for questions now.
We're good. We're scheduled to 11:45, basically.
Okay. I figured that there would be questions, and I wasn't sure if I should pause at certain points so that it doesn't get lost. There's a couple more things to kind of share in terms of lessons learned and moving forward. But what would be your preference, Nam, in terms of time? Should I just walk through the rest of the presentation or do okay. So the career coaching services are in partnership with it's an interagency agreement that we entered with Commerce and ESD, and they contract with local workforce development boards for career coaching services. And just kind of sharing an early demographic snapshot of what of recipients of those services and kind of growth in the workforce development space in for all areas of racial minority groups being served with the workforce system. So wanted to kind of showcase this as a snapshot. And then if we can go to the next slide, before we talked a little bit about the Small Business Resiliency Network last time we met, I think in May of last year, and just wanted to share that there is funding from the CRP that's allocated for the Small Business Resiliency Network for asset building, technical assistance, and a credit loan program that the network has come up with together. That's a pretty phenomenal loan program that was going to run out of funding. I think the funding was going to end by the end of December. The CRP provided additional funding for all of these partners to support their work over to finish out the rest of the year with their loan program. And it's a small loan program that allows for businesses to build credit. And so once they can borrow like up to $25,000, and as they make payments to pay back the 25,000, once it's all paid off, they actually get that 25,000 back. But the idea is that they're making payments and it's being reported to the credit agency, so they're kind of having a credit building opportunity for their business idea. So phenomenal program. Looking forward to learning more about those results later, and just wanted to share a little bit about that investment too. If we can go to the next two slides. There we go. Thank you. So a few lessons learned in emergent practices. The CRP, we've really been at this for, actually getting contracts out the door for about a year and a half, which is a short time, I think, in terms of trying to, look at the impact of this kind of investment. But here's some things that we're learning along the way. We definitely needed more time for implementation of the CRP, for knowledge mobilization, to get ahead of and be in more partnership in terms of co-creation as we're implementing. I think we definitely need more time, more staff, and more experience with how do we innovate, where are we finding the best practices, and how do we use more of them as we think about the equity work that we're engaged in? Definitely more data disaggregation to identify communities that could be left out or not are unseen in terms of where some of the needs are. We saw a lot of that with the category for Asian, and not being able to separate out and do some data, our Asian Pacific Islander as one category, and not being able to do some data disaggregation with how we might target particular communities as an example, and build co-creation plans with them. Cross-racial and cultural collaboration, trying to work through in partnership with different communities on how we do this together, as opposed to having groups feel like they are competing with each other, are setting up situations where we've done that as government. Strengthening partnerships with buy-in for organizations, I think, is is what we've seen really work with this program, on getting information out and using word of mouth for the uptake and the speed of what we've been able to do. We have well over 1,000 organizations registered and in communication with us with the CRP. Co-creation, I think, is really key to get to culturally responsive programs. It's going to look different. Violence prevention is going to look different in each community, I think, and trying to come up with ways that we think about that and design culturally responsive programs. I think we can do more in that space. We've had an opportunity to prioritize contracting with buy-in for organizations. And again, that's an area where instead of, having having larger organizations that don't represent that particular community, being able to prioritize contracting with the smaller groups, I think is helping us learn and be nimble and be more flexible, and get dollars out in a targeted way that we haven't been able to do before. And I think that's showing up in the data in terms of who's being served. The other thing that we've been able to practice is braiding funding and doing more system collaboration. So an example of that is trying to leverage the reentry contracts with legal assistance to make sure that the reentry providers that don't do legal assistance are doing navigation to folks that provide legal assistance. Or there could be other scenarios where peer navigators that are trained to do peer navigation can do referrals for mental health services or reentry services or those kinds of things. And so trying to get the portfolio and the system of providers to kind of work together and to leverage each other's expertise, I think is one idea of that. And you can go to the next slide. I'm sorry. Oh, I did have a couple of things on the new version that I sent over that you asked for, Nam, which was future CRP recommendations. And if it's helpful, I can share my screen.
Again, can you let Colbert share his screen?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm trying to pull this out.
Okay. I think this is it. Okay. Okay. All right. Oh, nope, that's the old one too. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry, I don't have that one on.
Oh, you can just say it and we can move to questions.
Okay. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you. So the approach that we have articulated in and again, the CRP is not in Governor Inslee's budget. And so this was the idea in terms of moving forward with the CRP and how we would approach the work. Instead of having the racial categories or the target community decided just by the first proviso, we'd go back to the original RCW in terms of the account, look at those 5 areas of investment, which includes reentry, legal assistance, violence prevention, economic development, and adds agriculture. And we would gather data for each of those investment areas, each of those 5 areas, and then prioritize funding based on the groups with the groups that have the largest disparities. And then allocate by region, and then procure our target by region, target distribution by region, and then procure contracts. And so the way that we would approach that would first involve Commerce getting input from the state racial and ethnic commissions in terms of what data would be used, prioritize funding using either publicly available data or qualitative data to target communities with the greatest needs, while also thinking about making sure that we have a where data is not available, how do we use story and use voices from community to identify the need. And so for each of the 5 areas, looking at the data, prioritizing by the greatest need, and then doing the allocation and the procurement processes. Let me kind of pause there and just see if that makes sense.
Yeah. Commissioner, or anyone else in the room, does anybody have any question for Colbert?
Hi, this is Commissioner McKenna. I know questions, but I just wanted to pop in and say that it seems like you all have been doing so much work, Corbett and Dave. It's really good to see you both. Thank you for all the work that you've put into kind of the evolution of the CRP to get it where it is. And it's so encouraging to see a State Department like Commerce finding lessons that are community-based that will hopefully help to move the work equitably in the future. So this is all looking really, really good, and it's encouraging, and I really appreciate all your time on this.
Thank you.
Colbert, I don't see any other questions, so.
Yeah. Well, there was only one more slide, and it had to do with I thought the first question would be, well, what kind of data would you look at? And so I did add a slide in terms of some of those data points, but I can also share that if there's another direction that the group would like to go.
That's a good question. Yeah, I would like
Okay.
to see what kind of data you want to look at, and then we can see what we have. Yeah.
Okay. Let me try to blow this up a little bit. So could be things like income level by race, or homeownership level by disparities in homeownership among different groups, unemployment rates, ALICE categories, so people that are over they're not in poverty, but they're below their self-sufficient wage. And so the working poor and people that are struggling to kind of make ends meet, what does that racial kind of breakdown look like, or ethnic breakdown look like, or disparities within are different disparities that we could take a look at. So for each category, coming up with a list of some very specific questions that we could try to get at disparities, and then target resources to by and for organizations that represent those groups.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So does any of the commissioner or member of the public have a question for Colbert?
Edie Nam, I just had a quick comment and question for Commerce and Corbett. Thank you so much for this presentation. I just wanted to go back to that slide that showed the percentage of distribution between the different communities, I think on the workforce in reinvestment.
Mm-hmm.
And just call out that, hopefully moving forward, there will be a shift towards really recognizing that shift of reinvestment does include our Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and Asian community to a significantly larger percentage than what is there right now, because Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander are at 1% right now, and just recognizing that. And thank you. I know that there's work being done on that front, but I just did want to call out that percentage.
Thank you. Yeah, and these groups are, I know they're working really hard to try to build those relationships and build those connections, and that's something that we want to support too, and happy to also connect any commissioners with that system as well, and have some meetings in terms of like what does it look like, and why is that number. It is a statewide number. I don't know if it would be higher in certain areas than others, and maybe if we looked at that data, which they do, they look at it by county or by the region, the 12 different regions, and so maybe there could be. We have noticed that in some cases we'll see a lot more African Americans like served in the Seattle area versus and a lot more Hispanics served in the Yakima area. There could be different versions of that, but we want to make sure that we're advancing that work and happy to make some connections and advocacy there on how we can continue to improve.
Thank you. I know the state legislature had really hoped, particularly our API legislators in the state had called out the lack of representation in this reinvestment process. I know Senator Hasegawa had been very vocal about this, and I do want to bring back that statement. And I hope that CAPAA commissioners will get an opportunity to connect with the people in commerce to further see what's going to happen in the days and months ahead.
Thank you. Any other question for Commerce and Colbert?
I have one comment.
Okay.
And that is, Corbett, you mentioned that there are 6 advisory teams, and my question would be, are they collaborating with the various ethnic commissions that have representation and commissioners in those 6 counties that you have advisory teams? So I would encourage that there would be that kind of connection that is natural, because we're already in those counties and working with the communities.
Absolutely. That's a great connection. We'll share out some contacts with the commissions to the coordinators at the local level.
Thank you. Any other questions? Good.
And
go ahead, Colbert.
no, yeah, it would be helpful also to know where we're hitting the North Star in the right area, so that we can keep thinking and keep working on certain pieces of this that CAPAA finds valuable and interesting, and we can pay attention to that. So if really hoping to get any feedback on certain pieces or specificity, and happy to be available with a smaller group to work through any of the details. I know it's a lot of information to cover in one setting, but would really appreciate the opportunity to partner with CAPAA on or any of the commissioners in this work.
I do have one question for you, Colbert. So I know that this is not in the governor's budget, but it's a request legislation from Commerce. When would you think we know whether this would be reappropriated, and when can we start the process of?
Dave, are you on the line?
Yeah. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Dave Pringle here from the Department of Commerce, and thank you so much for having us today to present on this. And yeah, Executive Director Nguyen, we did ask for some more funding. The budget situation in the state has really limited operating and general fund state resources going forward, as we've all seen. And so the community reinvestment project was not allocated any funding in Governor Inslee's budget. But we know that there are leaders who are interested in continuing this work. There are organizations that are interested in continuing this work. And so really we will look to what the legislature includes in the budget and direction on how best to step forward on how that would be implemented. Like Corbett said, we've had some ideas, but we want to hear from other communities. We'll be presenting and updating the incoming Governor Ferguson administration about this work so they have an understanding of it and where we see some benefits. But really, we're going to have to work with our state legislature over the coming months to see what's possible. And so, by the time we get a final budget, the end of May, or end of April, we'll have much more clarity about whether portions or the whole thing will continue in kind of this format. So welcome to stay connected on how that looks and hear from other leaders about how they want to see this step forward.
Yes, and we'll continue to work with our legislative partners and the governor's office we'll keep this on our radar. Well, go back, Dave. Thank you for presenting. It was very informative, and as you could hear from Commissioner McKenna, we think that you're going in the correct direction, and changes have been made. We'll continue to work with you in the near future, especially hopefully in May. We'll see where this goes.
Thank you.
Okay, Lalita.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will now turn to our next item on the agenda. It is the API CAG, the Cultural Awareness Group. Introduction by Florence Sum. The floor is yours.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm also going to do some slide action. Evelyn Chow is also on the Zoom link and will also be co-presenting with me to represent the API Sisters chapter, which we'll talk a little bit more. So hopefully we'll get all of this done. Oh, snaps. I lost the share screen part. Hold on. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Here we go. Thank you all for your patience. So I'll just start with a little preamble as that starts loading. We are two volunteer sponsors for API CAG and API Sisters. The acronym means Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Awareness Group. It has a lot of history inside DOC facilities, prisons in Washington State. And we're here to talk a little bit more about a different constituency base, but still a constituency base to CAPAA. And we'll talk about history, we'll talk a little bit about programming and a little bit of opportunities to move through. But first, we'll do some intros and I'll hand it off to Evelyn first.
Yeah, good morning. So my name is Evelyn Chow. I use any pronouns. I'm also a Red Badge sponsor at the Washington Correction Center for Women in Purdy, Gig Harbor, Washington. And, my affiliation, our chapter began in 2019. I'll give a little bit more background later, but, I moved to Seattle in 2015 to attend Seattle U and took a class on the politics of disposability, which had basically forever changed my presentation or my understanding of mass incarceration in the US. So yeah, proud to be doing this work. Flo?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Flo. They, she pronouns. I'm a volunteer sponsor at Stafford Creek Correction Center in Aberdeen, Washington. And I came to this work because I wanted to really shrink the contradiction that I had around the values of abolition and community and to actually have action towards it. So I got involved about 7-8 years ago through a community member who recruited both Evelyn and I think. But yeah, thanks for having us. So like I said, here's our quick agenda. We talked a little bit about who we are, Flo and Evelyn. We're going to talk a little bit about history, what our work has been, what's work inside has been, how to get involved, and a little bit of Q&A. So we'll start off with the mission.
Yeah, so the API Cultural Awareness Group, it's a collective. The API CAG and the API Sisters are both collectives of incarcerated individuals across Washington State working to build spaces to learn about their culture and themselves and building their leadership and skills to serve their community better, both in and outside of the prison. Their mission is to educate our members and our communities on the importance of Asian and Pacific Islander cultures, to maintain the function and authenticity of cultural groups within the DOC, and to preserve their cultural platforms so that they can create opportunities for meaningful work and change. Flo will go into a little bit of the history, past and present. We currently have about 4 active chapters in Shelton, Clallam Bay, WCCW or Purdy, and Stafford Creek. But we also have some chapters that have fallen off into the inactive status around Monroe, Walla Walla, Coyote Ridge, and Airway Heights.
Yeah, so this is a very truncated and not fully built out history, so don't worry about memorizing any of these bullet points. But what came to fruition is around Yoshua White and Andy back out in Clallam Bay. There was not a lot of, as part of also history of how many people get incarcerated for API and APA communities in the 80s and 90s, maybe even early 2000s. It started a wave, but like not as many folks, but the desire was really there to have cultural representation and space to both celebrate their culture, convene, learn, but also to really fight for their own freedom. There were groups, I'm not saying that there weren't any. There was Asian Alliance in Monroe in the 80s, and there were a lot of DEI initiatives pushed from the DOC administration. But they really wanted more cultural responsive programming, dance, music, food, ways to convene folks from outside and their family. So when got to Clallam Bay more formally, 2013, nothing was there, but they really wanted a way. So they pushed through cross-cultural organizing inside through a hunger strike, and they had a campaign asking for community to also support them. And they really also connected to Black Prisoners Caucus, Nuestro Grupo Cultural, Native Circle, and other cultural groups inside to be like, hey, we also want our space. Can you support us? And that ended up building out. Since from like 2013 to 2018, a lot of programming, which I'll get into a little bit more, but they had a beautiful partnership with the Black Prisoner Caucus to do education classes through their Teach program. And they also have met and connected with folks, community groups here in Washington State, like FIGHT, formerly incarcerated group Healing Together, ACRS, and more. And there's, if you want to learn a bit even more, as we are like fighting for cultural group status in DOC, there is a beautiful article written by Felix Sithavong at the International Examiner. It's called On the Fence Line, and has a case for cultural groups. Overall, since like 2013, it's continued to be evolve into becoming more politicized, really understanding their circumstances, reflecting on this, what has contributed to them being inside prison, but also like what it means to heal themselves, and like how do we tangibly work and advocate towards change inside and outside communities. And I'll pass it to Evelyn for like API Sisters.
Yeah. So the API Sisters officially started in 2019 after lots of back and forth with DOC administration between 2017 and 18. And it started in response to the growing needs by women and folks inside of WCCW, which is one of the state's 2 women's correctional facilities. As folks may know, women are the fastest growing incarcerated population in the US. The rate of incarceration has increased about 500% over the last 40 years since 1980, from around 30,000 individuals to almost now present day, almost 200,000 women inside of prisons across the US, a lot of whom are survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault. And so we started off at API Sisters with Purdy with a group of about 5 volunteers. We all have, had different experience in different fields. Some worked in tech, nonprofits, government. And we were really lucky, as Flo mentioned, to have that cross-cultural solidarity between the Black Prisoners Caucus, the NGC, and other cultural groups inside and out. And we had about a year of monthly programming. Really wanted to make sure that we were bringing some enriching programming inside. We had done, like a healing arts workshop with a Vietnamese American artist, Trinh Mai. There were a lot of desires for cultural sharing, as well as DVSA survivor resource sharing. There was a lot of interest in learning about gender equity, like Gender 101, desires around ESL, increased learning for ESL at DOC, organizing their banquet and legislative summits and working on policy together. So we really took cue from a lot of the already previously established like men's API-CAG chapters and the work that they were able to get done in their facilities with their sponsors. In 2020, unfortunately, we were shut down, of course, due to COVID. And over the past 4 years, we as volunteer sponsors have a lot of experienced a lot of internal DOC shifts. There was a lot of new volunteer coordinators almost every other year. There are community partnership coordinators. And so to this day, we still haven't been able to get back into the facility, despite other faith-based like groups being able to resume their programming. So still we know the critical role that cultural groups can play for folks inside. And while we as sponsors haven't been able to get back inside. While we've been outside, we've been able to write several letters of support for clemency or commutation of sentences, supporting folks who are targeted by ICE, a lot of support around reentry in partnership with FIGHT, fundraising for their annual banquets and so forth. And so we're really hoping we can return this year and are still seeking additional volunteers as the capacity between our group has shifted over the last few years.
Yeah, thanks, Evelyn.
I have a question before you go on.
Yes.
So are the issue of getting access to present to run activities across every single correction facility, or is it just a particular sites?
It varies. I know there is some facility that is about lack of volunteers. Some of it is an administrative hoop that we have to cross. And then some, like Evelyn is saying, for Purdy, it has been
kind of a combination of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because each DOC facility, they are in charge of what it meant to reopen. So there are varied responses. It's not a very cohesive across the state.
Yes. And so when I was saying, there were a lot of internal shifts within DOC, I was talking about my facility specifically at Purdy. There was a new, community partnerships person, new volunteer coordinators that we just had to continue to reintroduce ourselves. And, despite having redone our paperwork every year to, keep our trainings and our volunteer status up to date, we had just been getting kind of pushed down the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Nem. All right, moving into programming, and also just to highlight, like Time and Johnny are also on this call. They were formerly incarcerated and were inside API-CAG, but they're on the outside and doing really great work too. So maybe we'll hear from them in a little bit if we got time. If not, we're just gonna keep launching into this programming. So it's a range of stuff that they've been able to do. They've hosted like youth summits, deportation town halls, especially really recognizing the intersection of ICE impact on APA and API communities. And so many of the guys inside have really learned like, oh, you're on an ICE docket. How can we fight our own deportation? What does it mean to re-enter into a country we haven't actually been to for decades amount of time? And they've all created these types of different workshops, created their own curriculum. They've done also cultural dance classes, language classes, history, movement, political history, and strategies. There's a beautiful photo of Evelyn right there about reentry and what it means to also campaign and support folks as they come out of prison. They've done mentorship and art. There's, as I have already cited, articles that they've written. They've created zines in collaboration with nonprofit organizations here in King County. And they've done a lot of advocacy work as well. Another article that was also written by Felix is really citing the inadequate medical care of incarcerated individuals inside. And just like really citing the longer wait times, the lack of being able to see people in a proper setting, et cetera, et cetera. And so they've been able to really mobilize each other. They've been tracking a lot of legislation, also to really see what can be impacted in tackling the prison industrial complex. Yeah, and so that's a very short, truncated bits of programming, and these are all happening in various capacities, limited amount of time in collaboration with other cultural groups or admin to do programming, even if they don't have like active chapters. Like Monroe has stuff, Stafford Creek has stuff. but they're trying their best to having like more regular volunteers. Yeah, and I'll switch it to Evelyn.
Yeah. And I also just want to underscore the importance of something Flo was talking about with regards to just so folks who may not know, we as sponsors are not allowed to interact with the folks inside through Securus or JPay. And so, there's a lot of volunteer coordination happening behind the scenes between Fight and all these different volunteer collectives and then the sponsors to be able to make sure we're staying up to date on, even if we're not able, especially over the past 4 years, to be inside, how we can still continue to support through their storytelling. So I know the International Examiner has been a really great support too in making sure that their stories are, being published. So just wanted to underscore that. Finally, yeah, some upcoming opportunities on how to get involved. Flo talked about a little bit already, but we do try to, keep our eye on bills that may impact incarcerated APA or API communities. We have our eyes set on the Senate Bill 5002, the exchanging info to ICE, as well as House Bill 1239, the reentry bill, which is, hopefully to join and pledge support to the Reentry 2030 initiative, which is a nationwide initiative to increase the quality of conditions for folks who are reentering after being inside. And, again, folks are actively tracking and assessing, so stay tuned. We also, always need more support for cultural groups and a push for inclusive programming. Something we've been working on in partnership over the last few years with folks inside is the DOC cultural group policy. Currently, cultural groups within DOC are only recognized under the religious policy. It's our CW 560-200, which has no clear definition on what the cultural groups are or how they can operate or function within DOC. And as you've heard from this history, there's for so many years now, cultural groups have been operating for change in many different areas around social justice, religious or spiritual change, legal, educational, etc. And so over the past few years, we had heard that DOC was working on developing a new cultural group policy that, we, at least the folks inside, had not heard of, whether that may limit the function of cultural groups or restrict any resources or support to cultural groups. And so that's something that we're trying to keep our eyes on from the outside. Attending events and connecting with API CAG and API Sisters is a really important way to stay connected with folks inside. So during their annual banquets, it's actually one of the rare opportunities like members of the public can also, go in and interact with everyone. I know Stafford Creek has their Asian New Year event happening around March or April, pending DOC approval, as well as their API CAG banquet, which is happening in the summer around July or August. And so, if you're able to attend, connect with the folks inside and just learn about what they're fighting for, and then bringing that with you in your work. I know there's a lot of policymakers on this call, and then finally, becoming a volunteer. We need to build capacity, as volunteers, basically at every facility, even the ones that are active. It's just maybe just like a couple of us or even one person, with Flo at Stafford Creek. And so, yeah, it's really important and it really makes a huge difference. So.
Thank you. But thank you. I'm sorry, I had scheduled us for only 15 minutes.
Sorry, yeah.
This is a conversation that we can have, continuing conversation in a subcommittee, in a committee, especially in terms of policy. And that's one thing I think we can especially advocate for. Can I ask Commissioner Pascua for the Health and Human Service? Normally, a lot of this is education, but I think education is quite tied up for the time being. Do you think this is something Health and Human Service can pick up?
I think we can. I mean, it's obviously about human services, and this is a part that doesn't always get elevated to a place where we want to be able to talk about or even to sometimes acknowledge. So, yes, I think that Health and Human Services Committee can stay in contact and continue to work with Flo and Evelyn to make those connections more permanent between CAPAA and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Senator Hasegawa.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thanks for the presentation, Flo and Evelyn. I just wanted to note for you that there's a reporter at the Seattle Times named Gustavo Sagrero who is putting together an article. He caught site of my bill 5103, which is to expedite clemency hearings for people facing deportation. I know that's one of your program areas in your presentation. So he was looking for people to interview directly with good examples to tell stories of how this bill might impact them, but it's in the context of an overall trying to support people of color, especially immigrants in the prison system. So if you can contact him or give some referrals to him, that would be awesome. And I can give you his contact information if you like, or I'll just put it in the chat. I don't think he would mind. The other thing is you've got so many different areas that need to be fixed. And I see the DLC is working to change their cultural group policies and whatnot. And some of that stuff can be mandated legislatively. So if you can think of stuff that you think needs to be in the statute that would improve conditions, let me know, because I'm happy to sponsor bills on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hasagawa. And yeah, I have Gustavo's contact. I believe he's with KUOW, so we can
Oh,
continue.
KUOW, yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting. This is the work I actually have a lot of personal interest in. I do represent people incarcerated, one person incarcerated right now, and I do think this needs to be some changes in how the way the system works. So, but we'll continue this conversation at a later time. I'm sorry for not timing it correctly. Your presentation should probably given more time on this on the agenda.
Thank you so much, Flo and Evelyn. And we're now entering into the public comment portion of our meeting, where we can hear from members of the public. At the beginning of this meeting, we asked interested members of the public to message in the chat to sign up for public comment. Staff will call out those names in order. If you just logged on, it is not too late to sign up. At the end of public comment, I will call for any remaining speakers we may have missed before concluding. Please note each person has 2 minutes to submit public comment with a chime reminder at 30 seconds left. The clock on the screen will help you keep your time. If you run over time, you may be cut off. Staff, please share the first 2 names or the names of the people who signed up for public comment, please.
We don't actually have any comments at this time. If anyone wants to chime in to comment, please let us know.
I see Senator Hasagawa would like to sign up for public comment.
Thank you, Senator Hasagawa.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair Opala. So I appreciated your comments during the CRP presentation. The way it was implemented to me was totally anti-Asian racist. And that must be corrected before that program is re-implemented again. What concerned me in the presentation was that Commerce said they were going back to the buy and for funding model or distribution model, which is fine. I mean, it's a great program in theory and a great way to implement the program. But if they continue to use the buy and for organizations definition that they've already created, then it's just going to continue to be anti-Asian, anti-Pacific Islander, NH. So that has to be corrected. And I appreciate that you all are tracking this, as I will be as well, because it's not going to continue unless that program glitch has been fixed. So through the last legislative session, this issue has become so divisive. It's really, and that's not what was intended for it at all. And by defining it around terms of war on drugs, it was framed as a war against Black and certain brown people, apparently, as well as hippies, is what they mentioned. But they're right on point with the need for disaggregating data and not seeing Asians as a monolithic minority, a model minority in which most data will show, and they'll tell us that we're doing better than white people in most cases. That's why we don't need it. Our communities don't need it. Okay, time's up. Thank you very much. That was a soft
Fantastic,
landing.
Ava. I think we appreciate your leadership in this, and I'm hoping that from CAPA we will follow it up. Thank you. I think we have one more comment from Devin.
We have Ray Pascua first, and then Devin. And sorry, Ray, for saying your last name incorrectly. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Ray Pasqua, Emeritus Commissioner of the Commission. And I just wanted to note several things that I was participating in the last quarter of 2024. Happy New Year to everybody. Essentially, first of all, I wanted to note the passing of Francisco Aragon. His funeral was in the month of October. He basically was a legendary leader in the Seattle, King County, Asian Pacific Islander community. Three other items I would like to mention is that in the month of October, the Filipino Hall in Wapato, Washington, has a designation from the United States Department of Interior as a historic site for Asian Pacific American, Filipino American communities. And that hall was celebrated with 300 people attending the celebration of its placement on the National Register of Historic Places. In the month of October also, I was happy to chair a committee that made for the recognition of a United States Coast Guard fast response cutter. And it's the first such armed services ship to be named for a Filipino American. Her name was Florence Finch, and she passed in 2016 at 101 years old. And the ship is a cutter that's stationed in Astoria, Oregon. The last item is that I was able to attend the national celebration. The Department of Labor Acting Secretary Stu named 3 Filipino American farm worker leaders who passed in the 1970s, but they were named Lariat Leong, Philip Vera Cruz, and Mr. Velasco, who were leaders in the National Farm Workers Union, and they were inducted into the Department of Labor Hall of Fame for leaders in the area of labor throughout the United States. So again, Happy New Year to everybody on the commission, and we look forward to a very productive legislative session. Thank you.
Commissioner Emeritus, we have the condolence to Frank Aragon and the for the commemoration of Florence Finch on our social media. Do you have the last thing you mentioned? We can also put that in our social media as well.
Basically, the designation of Filipino Hall in Wapato, Washington, which was inaugurated in March of 1952. It's been designated as a National Historic Site on the National Register of Historic Places on the by the Department of the U.S. Department of Interior. That was it. Thank you. Thank you.
And I attended that as well, and mentioned it at our last board meeting, and Ray did a great speech there. He was one of the speakers. But our next in-person meeting, I can bring the program for the paper program for anybody who wants to read through that and look at it.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Next person in meeting is in March. Chair Lolita?
Yes.
Chair, we have Devin next.
Yes. Go ahead, Devin, please.
Good morning, everyone. Devin Cabanillia. I'm a local Asian American historian. I work on different issues and also with Ray Pasqua quite frequently. I just wanted to raise to this group's attention, there is an interesting Senate bill coming up for hearing next week. It is for Chinese American public education, and it's under SB 5134. What's curious is there are no Chinese people who instigated or support this bill. It was raised by an independent community person in Buckley, Washington. It's held, the sponsor is Senator McCune, and myself and a group just met with him yesterday. We didn't raise any concern with him, but it seems a little bizarre that um, this bill is being put forward outside of the Asian American community. So I just wanted to raise that. Again, it's SB 5134, and it seeks to include local Chinese American state history into public education. But again, the people instigating and pushing this bill um, are not from the Asian American community. So just wanted to highlight that and let you know that through one of my history groups, Make Us Visible, we did approach him yesterday about why this bill, and he seemed quite oblivious. And one of the things that he raised was, we're talking about your oppression, but remember, the Irish were oppressed for 700 years. And it was just a very awkward conversation. I'm in line at Costco for gas, so I'm going to pump my gas now.
Well, thank you, Devin. I think we actually have this initiative that actually came up before, but not recently. I don't think Senator McCune has reached out to us, or the organization trying to sponsor it.
Yeah.
I think they have reached out to us.
Executive
No,
Director
go ahead,
Wynn,
Devin. Go ahead,
and then Devin, thanks for bringing it up. It's very interesting also, and because we do have that parallel API curriculum or API bill, right, that we just talked about earlier. So I'd be interested in following up also because I also see Senator Trudeau's name on it. Is that right? Yeah. And so I'm curious what the thought process is here as well in terms of whether it's complementary or if it's replacing or whatnot, and also why it got a hearing also. But anyways, yeah, we can certainly follow up, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, it is not complementary to the bill that the larger AAPI bill that my group is bringing forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I believe we had Devin was with Make Us Visible. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we have already agreed to support the Make Us Visible bill that was voted on earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. And I think, is that it for public comment for us? We can then move to Commissioner roundtables.
Vice Chair Bala, if I could just say one thing.
Yes, please. Go
I
ahead.
think for public comment, I think there's actually quite a few people here today. But if there's any issue or thoughts that people have that are like they raise or to bring to the commission as well, beyond like this speaking opportunity, is there an opportunity or a place for folks to send written comments or written follow-up to?
Yes, I think that would be great. I know we have people on this call, and if you would like to speak, the floor is yours for you to speak, or if you would like to even email CAPAA, please do take that opportunity to do so.
Yeah, so if Executive Director Wynn or Nagin, if you're able to put like an email that they can send something to, that would be great. Just so that we can make sure we follow up.
I'll put it in the chat box. In fact, somebody that attended the meeting today has sent us an email to that. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Kosai.
I I just submitted that info in the chat. I don't know if it's coming through. We've been dealing with some technical difficulties, but it, the short form of the email is CAPAA@capa.wa.gov.
Oh, and I sent in another version of the same email.
Oh,
It goes to the
perfect.
same message. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nagin. We will now move to Commissioner Roundtable updates. I'll lead the Commissioner Roundtable discussion. I'll go first and we'll call on the next Commissioner to share and then popcorn on to the next person. We each have up to 5 minutes. Once everyone has gone, we will have about 2 minutes for Q&A. So I'll just go first and bring up the fact that this EDNAM, we did have a decision on the Janvi Kandula case from the city of Seattle. And while the officer who was speeding has been fired, the ask from the community and ACLU has been on clarity in guidelines for officers who are answering calls, whether they are emergency or not, in terms of speeding, in terms of the use of flashing lights. So I just wanted to make a point that ACLU has been working a lot on that end. Also wanted to bring up our work on mental health and that we are going into a cross-cultural mental health first aid for youth in East King County that we are collaborating with other organizations on. If there is any interest, please do reach out to us on King County side because there is interest on a cross-cultural youth mental health first aid event that will come up in spring. In addition to that, I did want to point out that the APIC Legislative Day is coming up on February 13th. Thank you, CAPAA, for working with APIC on that. I know there's a lot of advocacy work that is going on. And if there is specific interest on certain bills, to please reach out to your APIC chapter. So my updates are done, and I can go to Vice Chair Kosai.
Sure. I will be brief. So I will say and mention that having a lot of conversations recently with community members about their strong concerns with the incoming administration and what that means for our communities. And I think how does CAPA play a role in protecting our communities and hearing those and advising is going to be really critical here over the next 4 years. And so really looking forward to seeing how we can work collaboratively as commissioners, as a commission with state government to protect our community. So that's one thing that I'm currently thinking about, mulling over, processing at the current moment. I think the other thing that I'll mention is that with the upcoming legislative session, I want to just put it out there to anyone that we have that if there are any bills that are of concern to the AA and HPI community, that we make sure that we are alerted to them. So please send those along as things kind of move forward. And then the last thing I'll mention is that the OCA, Asian Pacific American Advocates, they're having their Golden Circle event on next Friday, January 17th, 5:30 p.m., where they're going to be honoring Tuck In, Tomio Moriguchi, Dolores Sabanga, and the Jackson Street Community Council as well. So I encourage everyone to attend if you're able to. And I look forward to working with everyone in this new year.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kosai. You can popcorn to the next person.
Sure. How about actually, can I add one thing because I totally forgot about it? One more thing is, so this 2 meetings ago, and then the last meeting I mentioned again is the Lava Ridge Wind Farm project that is in Idaho, is a project that was going to be within the kind of the scope of the Minidoka incarceration site where Japanese Americans were incarcerated during World War II. And so the Minidoka Pilgrimage Committee has a number of different advocates that have been advocating against that because it does disrupt the solemn nature of the site, and is kind of people are acquiescing on a promise to the Japanese American community of cultural and historic preservation. Many Japanese Americans from Washington State actually were incarcerated at Minidoka during World War II as well, and so this became a Washington State issue. Unfortunately, the Department of the Interior decided that to go ahead with that wind farm project, despite strong community opposition, despite the Washington State the historical preservation officer also being against that project. And so the group is continuing to fight the project and the approval of it moving into the next year. So just wanted to update people on that. It's still a really big, strong concern for the community. And I think, and I appreciate CAPAA as well as the state of Washington support in fighting back against it. So with that being said, I will pass it over to Commissioner Lehrman for their update.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that Minidoka issue is near and dear to my family. My mother grew up about 5 or 10 miles away from the Minidoka internment camp there. And although my family wasn't interned there, as they were native to the area and they farmed in the area, there was lots of friends and family that were interned in that area. So thanks for bringing that up, Commissioner Kosai. Since our last meeting, just went to the Health and Human Services and Education Committee meetings that we have. And another highlight, just personal education for me, was my wife and I and my oldest daughter, who's a freshman at Washington State University. We said we'd take her on a trip by herself without her other siblings. And we went prior to Christmas to Oahu, Honolulu area. And there's lots of Asian and NHPI education to be had there. We went and saw Pearl Harbor. But of even more interest, not more interest, but something that really expanded my views there's a Polynesian Cultural Center. Some of you may have been there, but you go there and it's students from Brigham Young University that run that place and work there, but they have cultural islands, I'll say, and we spent an entire day there. In each spot, you learn about different cultures. So there was Tonga, Tahiti, Fiji, Hawaii, Samoa, and then Aotearoa, I think is how you say it. More of us know it maybe as New Zealand. But learning about the native peoples from each of those countries. So I learned a lot there in a day, and it was a very eye-opening and educational experience there. So that's all I have, and I will pass it to Commissioner Cho.
Thank you, and it's good to see everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. There were really just two things I wanted to highlight. First, I think I want to build off of Commissioner Kosai's comments around this new administration, but also want to flag, as many of you know, there are some huge budget deficits in local government as well. Seattle, the state government, and the county are all facing huge deficits, on top of the fact that we have a presidential administration that is essentially going to target states like ours, sanctuary states. President-elect Trump has been very clear that he's going to be going after his enemies, so to speak. And I don't think it's any secret, the relationship that our new governor has with the president. I think he's sued Donald Trump like 90 plus times. And so I fully believe that we are going to be in the crosshairs of this new administration. The reason I mention this is because as we deal with restricted resources, we need to make sure that this commission is advocating for those resources not to be disproportionately and negatively impacting our communities. And so I certainly hope that NAM and the team are looking to see and ensure that our communities are getting their fair share in the midst of major cuts coming down the line here. Secondly, I wanted to point out that we had a tragic death in the community. As many of you may have heard, Sean Yim was a Metrobus driver who was tragically stabbed to death. And I got to admit, our community is going through some major distress right now with the recurrence of these violent acts. You all might remember last year, Ina Kwan was tragically shot in Belltown, carrying a newborn, being pregnant. The owner of Rainier Teriyaki was also killed. All senseless acts of violence. And so, if you know a Korean American, please give them a hug and words of encouragement. I think we're going through some hard times, and I really appreciate this commission and this community's support. That's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Cho. So hear you on that. And our hearts go out to his family and the community. Chair Fongsai, Commissioner Fongsai, do you want to go ahead, please?
Yes, thank you. My report is been doing a lot of planning as chair of the Economic Development Committee. We're planning just things with the organizations and local community for the upcoming year. And I've been doing the same with Commissioner Sisabati for this year is the 50th celebration for the Laotian community coming to America. And so we're planning a big event August 8th at the Capitol to commemorate that. And so we're been doing a lot of planning and pre-planning from carrying over from 2024 and just staying connected with the community here. It's for economic development. It's a tough time, even in Eastern Washington. A lot of the small businesses have been struggling, and you see a lot of it in the news. A lot of small businesses are struggling and closing, and so just trying to stay connected with those members of the community and offer any help that they need.
Thank you. And you get to popcorn it to the next commissioner.
Yes, I'll Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Commissioner Fongsa. I have a very brief report as Chair of Health and Human Services, and it looks like thanks to ED Nguyen, we're going to be adding some more on Health and Human Services topics. So I just wanted to mention that with a focus on Health and Human Services, I just am recently joined the Governor's Interagency Council on Health Disparities, and there is a new Senate Bill 5228 that is being sponsored by Senator Marcus Riccelli. Actually, I believe he's Senator-elect, and also with a co-sponsor by Senator Hasagawa, and that bill is to restructure the Governor's Interagency Council on Health Disparities to be more inclusive of representation from the Women's Commission, from the LGBTQ community, and so we're hoping that that will gain traction and that we can actually get more participation on the council and its charge. The other pieces that I've been working on is I continue to be on the National Alliance for Mental Illness and the state committees for EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I was very grateful to hear E.D. Nguyen's comments about the concern for what's happening with some of the DEI programs in different places. And I just want to report that the DEI Committee on NAMI Washington is going strong and continuing to expand its work. They recognize how important it is, especially in behavioral health and frankly building up the necessary capacity and workforce, because we do not have enough workforce to serve our various communities, especially in different languages. And then the other pieces that I just wanted to share with you, in being in Yakima County, the largest AAPI populations happens to be still Japanese and Filipino. And so nice that they have community halls across the street from each other in Wapato. But just to let you know that I've been working with the Filipino community there and continue to, their elections is coming up soon. So I've been, my ongoing responsibility with them is to put together a slate and to ensure a fair and transparent election for the Filipino community leadership. And also staying involved with the Japanese community. They're going to be already looking at planning for the sukiyaki dinner fundraiser. So I'll just keep you posted on how those things are going. So that's it. And let's see who is left. Commissioner Kiana McKenna.
Thank you. Let me just pull up my notes here. Hope everybody's doing well. I will try to keep this short and sweet. I know our last roundtable updates, I think, were really short, so I have a couple of older comments, but I wanted to be sure to congratulate Commissioner Faitalia and all those involved in hosting a very successful hosting of our Samoan Prime Minister. Her work really impacts us all. And I wanted to actually share that one of the things that the Prime Minister said that she was really thrilled about when she was visiting was our community's relationship and partnership with local tribes. And I think that is something that should continue to be uplifted and invested in. In addition to that, in the last couple of months, I myself have met with our new Spokane police chief, who is actually, I believe, the first Native American police chief we've had in Spokane, which is super exciting. It was a really good meeting. He's been doing a lot of community outreach. We've also met with the DCYF language access team. They are working on better incorporating Pacific Islander languages into their work to make sure our families are being served well. Have also met with Office of Independent Investigation and then continue to meet with Providence Health Systems as well, just making sure that NHPI are not erased from their work and really being served in a culturally appropriate way. Something that I continue to bring up, but I just want to keep kind of bringing up, especially as we head into legislative session, is that we really continue to see an inconceivable amount of attacks on trans rights and people who identify as LGBTQIA2S+. It's really critical that we support queer and trans communities and center them in our work as most impacted. So I know in this upcoming session, I want to make sure that CAPAA is supporting bills that are centered around this community, especially the community members that identify as both Asian and NHPI. One comment I was asked to bring from a community member directly. This is a Marshallese elder in the Seattle area who's also a professor and nurse. She is actually concerned about limits on academic freedom, especially around critical race theory, reproductive justice, and LGBTQ rights. She was hoping that CAPAA could maybe look into this and just report back. I think this meeting has actually touched on a lot of these things, so that's great. I attended a climate justice 2-day assembly by Utopia, Washington, right before Christmas. It was really, really awesome, and I think highlighted a lot of the wonderful movement happening in community around climate justice. I know that there were some organizations there, including Front and Centered, who were able to kind of highlight the work that's been going on and make sure that we can organize ourselves well to make sure this work moves forward. And then I think just the last thing that I'm going to share right now is just as we go into legislative session, I know CAPAA's collaboratively working with ACRS for Legislative Day in February. And I think I would like to look into with CAPAA staff and then also the committee how we can better include NHPI-led organizations in this work. I think we know that ACRS and APIC chapters are not very representative of NHPI communities. And I think something that I noticed was missed last year was really good, clear leadership and even inclusion of NHPI organizations on this day. And I think for now, since we are sharing one legislative day wanting to make sure it's as representative as possible and that NHPI community members' voices are heard. So thinking it might be nice to have a meeting on this in the next couple of weeks if possible, but I know I'll be sending over the bills that we are following as PICA and then also bills that we're working on with Utopia and other NHPI orgs across the state. That is all for me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner McKenna. Actually, I do have two requests of you. Well, one of them is to meet with you in the next 2 weeks. We'll try to schedule that. And the other one is the person you talked about regarding academic freedom. Can you send us her contact information? We would like to reach out.
Yes, and yes, thanks.
I think the two-person left is Commissioner Lysing and Commissioner Sitabati. Either one of you is welcome to speak up.
Going one, going twice. This is Commissioner Sisvati. Thank you. So yeah, really just want to thank you again to CAPAA for the support for Make Us Visible. And just kind of moving forward as we prepare the bill, really we'll be seeking really broad support from the community and things will be coming out on social media like IG and Facebook for updates. So stay tuned for that. Also, as far as the Education Committee, really excited to kind of hear the funding for the Lunar New Year. So I'm looking forward to kind of working with CAPAA here, and looking into the RFP and then the next steps for that. So I think we have a meeting to specifically discuss that in our next coming meeting. I believe it's next week. So also wanted to kind of bring to everyone's attention, speaking of Lunar New Year's, it's coming up. So January 29th, really more well wishes to come. Happy New Year's now, Happy New Year's coming up. And we also have a lot of the communities from, Laos, Cambodia, Burma, etc., that are happening in April as well. So more New Year's, more opportunities to really celebrate and be in community with one another. On March 29th, the Lao Community Service Center will be kicking off the Lao New Year with a banquet. And they're also really honoring the Lao New Year, the 50 years of Lao cultural heritage and resilience. So invitations will be coming out soon. It's an open to the public. So both commissioners, Commissioner Pongsa and I will be in attendance there. And as Commissioner Pongsa had mentioned, 2025 marks a really major milestone for our communities, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and all the ethnic groups that came from those countries will be turning 50 as community. And so with our Lao community, as mentioned before, we're celebrating 50 years. We're booked up at the state legislative building with Capitol Lawn there, and I'll be working with CAPAA and on the next steps. Our efforts really is to do a unified community poster of events, really encouraging our communities and all communities to come and celebrate and support the events that are happening in 2025. We're also doing a state proclamation and as well as the statewide Suquan on state capital lawn. So be on the lookout for that. Things are coming. We meet once a month and the planning has begun for that. We're breaking into subcommittees. We just received final feedback for a proclamation from various ethnic groups that we have sent it to for their feedback. And next step on the proclamation is really connecting with Senator Hasagawa. You're here. I'll be in touch with you shortly, hoping we can still do the Senate resolution as well as the governor's office. We'll be sending it to CAPAA for that as well. So stay tuned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, Carrie, sorry, Lolita, I think Commissioner Lysing is no longer on.
Oh, I see. Okay. In that case, if we don't have any other additional questions or comments from commissioners, we can go into the March meeting planning, ED Nam.
I think I think we can skip that because we're way over time. Staff is on top of it. We're going to work with, as I mentioned during our retreat, it will be hosted by the commissioner who is in that particular county, which is Pierce County. So we'll work with Commissioner Kosai on this particular meeting and programming. This is one I actually highly encourage everybody to attend in person. It will be the first time we try to honor a community member and bring in communities at the same time. So please attend. It will be at our old partner APCC in their old building, in their temporary site. Commissioner Lemon?
Yeah, I didn't bring it up during my report. I was going to bring it up during planning. Just going to throw out an idea there for team building, since we don't all get together outside of the meetings. But I was wondering if I think there's a Mariners game they have every year for AANHPI. If we've ever put anything together as a group to get
We have
together,
not.
might be a good opportunity.
Actually, I do have two proposals for getting together. One of them is February 15th at APCC for their annual Lunar New Year celebration. Staff will attend, and then if a commissioner wants to attend, also we can't actually for these activities, especially with the budget shortfall, pay for people to pay for people to come over, but we can host events and get together like a dinner after the APCC event if people want to. The other event is do we have enough interest? We have former Commissioner Tokavalu has designed a special NHPI uniform for the Seattle Kraken. They will give away that uniform for those attending the March 30th game in Seattle. The ticket is quite expensive. If there's 10 commissioner willing to attend, it will be half off. Oh, we can have 10 people together to attend, it will be half off, which is still at the lowest $75 per person. So I'll send out an email after this asking who wants to attend the Kraken game. I myself personally want to attend, but if we can get 10, it will be half off. If not, the lowest ticket price will be around $150. It's quite expensive, as I stated. So yeah, I'll send out those more kind of a get together event, especially for the holidays for the Lunar New Year coming up. So I think that's all for the agenda, Chair Upala.
Yes. Now we are at good of order adjournment that can basically where at this time, do any commissioners have any other items for the good of the order? Otherwise, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
You don't have to have a motion to adjourn. You just adjourn. Yeah.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. If any commissioner wants to stay back to give meeting feedback to staff, is welcome. I'll stick around for another 5-10 minutes to see if anyone wants to give feedback about how this meeting went and any lesson learned for future meetings. But it's okay to log off now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Great rest of your weekend.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to say great meeting. I really appreciated it.
Thank you.
And the presentations and very valuable and very informative. Yeah, so I wanted to say thank you for that, and also to let you know I'm very interested in the Kraken game.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. If we can get 10 people, I'll send out an email right away. If we can get 10 people, we can get half off. It's still pretty expensive, and also support Commissioner Valu. It's a great accomplishment for him to be able to design a uniform for.
Yeah, really. And also, I see that Brianna is on, as she oftentimes, almost always is when she can make it. And I want to just recognize your participation and commitment, Brianna. Thank you.
Thanks, Auntie.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, that looked like no one else has decided to remain. I forgot one thing at the meeting is that Commissioner Ping's father has passed away, and that's why she was not at the Beartown meeting. We'll send her condolences.
Yes,
She's
I'm
out of the
sorry.
country.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention also that she was excused from the meeting today, and and she is a co-chair for the Education Committee. So
Yeah, and she's out of the country, so we can't send her
yeah,
flowers or anything. But maybe
right.
when she returns, we can do something for her.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Okay, thanks guys.
Okay. All right.
Thanks
Thank you,
Nadine.
Nam.
Thanks
Uh-huh.
Nadine. Thanks Brenda. I'll see you guys on Monday for our staff meeting.
Perfect. Sounds good. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Great weekend.